Okay, Dynasty talk. Get excited for that. I want a QB riser and a QB faller, Heath. And while you do that, let's look up the Twitter poll of who would you rather have in Dynasty, Trevor Lawrence or Justin Fields. Give me a rising QB.
Well, both of these guys are rising QBs this season. Looking back to the beginning of the season, we've seen Lawrence rise 2 spots since August, 3 spots since August, and Fields has risen 4 spots since August. I've got Fields now at QB 6, Lawrence at QB 8. That's for 6-point per passing touchdown leagues. The gap would be bigger in 4-point per passing touchdown leagues.
The poll results are interesting. Who would you rather have in Dynasty, Justin Fields or Trevor Lawrence? And you can choose either quarterback in both 6-point and 4-point per passing touchdown leagues. So Fields in both is winning with 45% of the vote. Lawrence in both has 27.4% of the vote. And Lawrence in 6-point, Fields in 4-point has 27.3% of the vote. So if I had just run a 6-point per passing touchdown league poll, it would have been really close between Lawrence and Fields. 4-point per passing touchdown league poll, I think Fields would have been a runaway. Yeah, which makes sense. But, you're seeing the poll results there, and I'm reading the third book.
Yeah, I think, and I like Lawrence has been, this is a good time to ask it because Lawrence is basically at the best 3-game stretch of his career. If we'd asked this 3 games ago, before Fields missed a game with injury and had his bye and had a bad game, I think Fields probably would have won 90% of the vote. The difference for this year, I think Fields has been 1.5 points better than Trevor Lawrence. In the second half since week 8, Fields has been 10 points better per game than Trevor Lawrence.
But in the last 2 games,
Fields has been awful and Lawrence has been much better. I think these guys both have a chance to be in the top 5 as early as next year. The struggle is whose situation is going to improve more. And I think it's probably Fields.
Well, we know what the situation is going to be for Lawrence. We're pretty sure about who he's going to have to throw to next year. Because not only will he have Kirk and whatever Zay Jones ends up being and whatever Evan Engram ends up being, but also Calvin Ridley will be there. That's a nice group. Fields is going to have to get his group together via free agency and the draft. So I wonder if that's going to be, it'll be a little rough with free agency. And the draft, it could take some time because I don't think the Bears are going to take a receiver with their top pick this year in the draft. I like Lawrence as the better talent anyway. That's where I came out before they were even drafted into the league. I'm going to say Lawrence because I think he's the better passer. I think he'll have the longer career, and you can see who his targets are going to be moving forward, and that's a good group.
But if somebody's looking at a 15-year window, I would agree about Lawrence's longevity mattering. At this point in their careers, it's like I generally tell people I don't look much past 5 years for anything because we're not that great at predicting this year, much less 5 years from now. I think it's hard to make a case that Trevor Lawrence is going to consistently score more fantasy points than Justin Fields in the next 5 years.
You're making the case that Justin Fields is going to be better than what I shouldn't say better, at least as good as what he's been this year for the next 5 years.
So
with no drop off,
more likely that Trevor Lawrence improves than Justin Fields. Because Justin Fields has been better than Trevor Lawrence this year. So why is Trevor Lawrence more likely to improve than Justin Fields?
He's going to have better targets and he'll be even more comfortable.
But he has better targets this year.
Same offense.
Much better.
Yeah, he's got better targets this year, and they're going to be even better next year.
I would assume the difference between who they're throwing to would be smaller next year and in future years than it is this year because look how big it is this year.
It's really surprising to me that Fields is outscoring Lawrence this year.
Well, it's the rushing.
Well, I understand that, but it also like he had those huge games because he was pretty crummy for the first 7 weeks or so of the season. I don't know off the top of my head.
Less than that, I felt like it was the first 4 or 5 weeks. He was terrible. And then they adapted the offense to him, and he got significantly better. He started to run a lot more.
Yeah, he obviously struggled. So, if you just asked me who's had a better year, my first thought would have been Trevor Lawrence. But He's been more consistent than Justin Fields, but Fields has had those weeks. They were just amazing. 30 points, 48 points, 44 points, and sandwiching those 3 weeks were 25 points and 25 points basically. So he's done all of that damage in a 5-week stretch. I mean, the first 6 weeks of the season, he had, a couple of good games, a couple of okay games, but
would we agree that it's much more likely Justin Fields is QB1 overall next year than Trevor Lawrence?
No, because this is the problem I have with this argument. It's like everyone just falls in love with rushing production, but at the end of the day, Joe Burrow is better than Lamar Jackson 2 straight years. You know what I mean? Like pocket and Lawrence is still a guy who rushes a little bit, but I don't love the just pure drop back passers so much, but I think we get away from.
Well, you've been anti-running quarterback for.
I'm absolutely not. I am not anti-running quarterback.
Yeah.
No, I love running quarterbacks. When you look at the guys who finish top 5, they're all good passers, even when they are great runners. Jalen Hurts couldn't be doing this if he didn't evolve as a passer, which Justin Fields certainly could do. You could even say Fields might be a better passer now than Hurts was a year ago.
Absolutely.
I would say that.
Absolutely.
And what a jump Hurts has made. So I'm certainly not eliminating that possibility, but you cannot be a great fantasy quarterback without good passing stats. And his passing stats are putrid.
But he's probably going to be a top 5 fantasy quarterback this year without good passing stats.
Maybe, but it's extremely inconsistent. I mean, if you really think about it, he was dropped in most leagues. He was awful for 6 weeks, basically.
He wasn't running.
We'll see how he finishes. He's also running it to a degree that we've never seen before. He's on pace for almost 1,800 yards in his last 7 games or something like that. It's insane.
Hold on. You've been playing Dynasty longer than me. How often / rare is it for a fantasy manager to have the same quarterback 5 or more years in Dynasty?
I mean, I think it's a little bit rare for a league to stay the same for 5 years. You usually lose a fantasy manager or 2 in that time span. But I think it's really rare.
Okay, so my answer for Lawrence over Fields was baking in longevity and the thought that you can get Trevor Lawrence and he'll be good longer than Justin Fields will be. But if I'm trying to win a fantasy championship in the next 2 years or 3 years, and I'm not playing the longevity game, I don't know if it's really that much of a question between these two. And I would probably say Fields in that regard. As good as that receiving core is going to be for Trevor Lawrence, and I think it's going to be great once Calvin Ridley's back and in the swing of things. The rushing upside for Fields and the fact that he is a decent passer, if not a good passer, he could become a real good passer. I'm going to flip my answer. I'm going to go with Fields simply because you can replace that position easier in Dynasty than you might think, I guess is the best way to put it.
And I think there's a little bit of prisoner of the moment here with talking about how inconsistent and bad Justin Fields was early in the year, because Trevor Lawrence was not a viable fantasy quarterback for most of this season. He went from week 5 through week 9 without a game with multiple touchdown passes. And week 4, he threw for 174 yards.
Was that the Eagles game?
Yeah, I mean...
No, this week is the Eagles. Oh, you're talking about Lawrence.
Right.
Yeah, bad weather. Tough matchup.
The excuses you will make.
No, I agree. I mean, look, you're right.
How about the turnovers? He had a bazillion
turnovers. Lawrence has been a model of consistency, but before this recent stretch, I mean, think about the narrative around Justin Fields. Halfway through the season, before he exploded. What was the first game he went off? The Cowboys game or the?
What was the narrative around Trevor Lawrence? It was bust.
Not for me. I thought he was making a lot of progress.
I understand that because he's not a running quarterback.
I think you're so wrong about the way I feel about running quarterbacks. You're focusing on the running angle of it. What you should be focusing on, or what I am focusing on, is the passing angle of it. I do not like quarterbacks who can't throw the damn football.
I understand.
And
what I have said with Jalen Hurts,
what
I said with Jalen Hurts in the past is a guy who runs, you are less likely to believe can improve as a passer. You see that Trevor Lawrence is going to continue to get better as a passer, and you're less likely to believe that Justin Fields is going to
You're
be better.
framing it wrong. It's not because he runs. It's because he's not a good passer right now. So, yes, I did not see this coming for Jalen Hurts. 100%.
I will just say through week 9, Justin Fields was averaging 2.5 more fantasy points per game than Trevor Lawrence. Lawrence was at 17.8.
What about through week 5?
They were both awful, and no one wanted to use them.
No, Fields was much worse, I would say. But also, Fields was, weaponless and just in like a boring, crappy offense with a terrible offensive line. I think the Jaguars got off to a pretty hot start, and we kind of, I bought into them. Look, obviously, you can make cases against both of them, but the point I'm trying to make, Keith, is that it's not that I don't like running quarterbacks. It's not. I love running quarterbacks. I just want them to be able to be good passers because I think that's the most important thing for a fantasy quarterback. Look at the best quarterbacks in fantasy. They're almost all like putting up good passing numbers. So again, yeah, Fields could definitely take that leap. And if he does, then he could be QB1. I don't know. I mean, I think the Jaguars are more set up for sustainable success. And also Trevor Lawrence, let's not forget, Trevor Lawrence was an amazing quarterback prospect, right? On the Andrew Luck level, or maybe just below that. So I think you look at the pedigree and you look at the progress that Joe Burrow has made. I think that's what we're talking about with Trevor Lawrence. So
through week 5, Justin Fields was awful, not even in the top 30. But Trevor Lawrence was at 17.4 fantasy points per game, right between Joe Flacco and Zach Wilson.
Well, Joe Flacco was terrific.
Joe Flacco was at 18.2 fantasy points.
Did Zach Wilson play, 2 games?
Yeah.
All right.